Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, good morning. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell with you through to 12:30. There's an awful lot to talk about this morning, including the Jeffrey Epstein files that have been released. David Williams dropped from his publisher for allegedly harassing its young female staff. That is what he is accused of and denies. We'll talk to a senior Conservative MP in a second, Sir Christopher Jope from Christchurch, about all the political difficulties as well. Democracy denied, those elections that have been postponed, and a watchdog criticising the unprecedented government offer to delay the local elections. This is the Electoral Commission, which runs and comments on so many elections in our society as well. We'll talk about workers' rights as well, and anti-Semitism, because there are so many police forces, including one at the centre of an anti-Semitism row, that won't commit to arresting people who say globalise the Intifada. We'll be talking about that, and also taking a bit of a deep dive into UNRWA a little bit later on. That is the UN body that you pay for as a taxpayer, that is supposedly giving aid to the Palestinians, but actually it's riddled with Hamas terrorists. We know that a number of people have been sacked for being Hamas terrorists, have been disciplined, and felt the full force of the law as well. UNRWA says that there is a concerted effort by Israel to smear it, but actually the truth is really interesting, and it's coming out in a new documentary. We're going to talk to one of the documentary makers, and we'll speak to an UNRWA spokesman as well. Lots to discuss this morning. As I say, we've got our packed debate desk as well. We've got Matthew Hulbert, the Liberal Democrat activist, and also Zach Wagman, who's a Conservative councillor for Stanmore. They're coming up. So loads to discuss, and I want to discuss it with you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note. Tech Update goes through all of those, and we play out as many as we can. Less than a minute, please, on the voice notes. 0344 499 1000. That's the same number if you want to send me a WhatsApp text message, or to give me a ring as well, and I'll put as many callers on the air as possible. It's interesting as well with young people. Number 10 told fix youth jobs or risk a lost generation. That's the front page of one of the papers as well. And Reeves ruins Christmas, says the Daily Mail. Shops suffering a disastrous December after the £30 billion budget tax raid. Clearly they just didn't realise how amazingly brilliant and wonderful Rachel Reeves's budget was. Why is that? That's what I wonder. Lots to discuss here on Talk between now and 12:30. Do give me a ring, as I say, 0344 499 1000. Well, as I say a little bit later on in the programme, we're going to take a bit of a deep dive into UNRWA. This is the UN body that you pay for as a taxpayer. Many countries around the world put money into it, but David Lammy, as Foreign Secretary, decided we were going to give it more money. Well, actually, on the 7th of October, in those attacks, we know that UNRWA employees were simultaneously Hamas terrorists, and killing, maiming, burning, raping, and doing lots of other horrendous things to Israeli people, including taking them as hostages. There's a big new documentary out called UNRWA Under the Spotlight, the documentary, and we're going to speak to one of the people who made it a little bit later on, and we're going to speak to UNRWA about it. Let's just have a little preview of what the documentary tells us.
The government of Israel is investing significant resources to portray the agency as a terrorist organization and our staff as terrorists or terrorist sympathizer. I ask that member states act to prevent the implementation of the legislation against UNRWA. Changes to UNRWA's mandate are the prerogative of the General Assembly, not individual member states.
Look at this picture. You can see Faisal Ali Muslim El Naami in the black shirt. Here he is seen loading with Jonathan Samerano into his car. An UNRWA employee. How does kidnapping and killing civilians fit into an UNRWA employee's job description?
It's a big and controversial documentary, and it's something we've talked about a lot on these programmes. We've seen as well in the UK, globalise the Intifada is something that 2 police forces say could well be something that people are arrested for. Pascal Robinson Foster hasn't been arrested. He is the lead singer of Bob Vylan, and it's 173 days since he chanted "Death, Death" to the IDF. He still hasn't been arrested. He has been interviewed by Avon and Somerset Police. We asked them for a statement on that. They say nothing has substantively changed in that investigation. But what we know is that it's next Sunday is the deadline. They're running down the clock, I think. They haven't denied that. I've asked them about it specifically. They didn't deny it specifically, but they said the investigation's ongoing and they still have time to charge him. We'll see what happens. Pascal Robinson Foster, lead singer of Bob Vylan, an anti-Semite who shouted "Death, Death" to the IDF, still hasn't been arrested. I'm going to keep banging on about it. I'm going to keep banging on about it. And when they don't arrest him, and when they do nothing about it, and when they let the clock run out, which is what they're going to do, they say there's still time. Well, let's see what happens in the next week. I'd love to be proved wrong. I'd love Sarah Crew, who is the Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset Police, to come on and tell me why nothing's happened. Well, not nothing. He's been interviewed, but he hasn't been arrested and charges haven't happened. We'll go into that story a little bit later on. But I want to speak to Sir Christopher Chope now, who is the Conservative MP for Christchurch, Senior Conservative. Sir Christopher, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. How are you?
That's my pleasure. I'm fine, thank you.
There's a lot around this morning, and of course we've seen the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Peter Mandelson, of course, the person who was our ambassador to Washington, came a cropper there. He called Jeffrey Epstein one of his best pals. He was seen sort of lounging around in a bathrobe, talking to him and so on. He went, and these files have come out. There's so much information coming into the public domain. I wonder what effect you think it might have on American politics, and specifically on UK politics as well, because I interviewed one of your parliamentary colleagues, Emily Thornberry, a few weeks ago, and she said, isn't it interesting that there are only actually 3 people, and they're all Brits, who have faced any consequence? Ghislaine Maxwell, who's in prison at the moment in America, Peter Mandelson, who lost his job, and of course Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor.
Well, I mean, this is all beyond my ken, really.
Not to worry. Do you think it'll have an effect on UK politics? Do you think it'll have an effect on UK politics?
Well, I think it already has had an effect, in the sense that we've got rid of our Peter Mandelson. Yes. And that the Prime Minister's judgment on appointing him in the first place, probably against the advice that he was receiving, the Prime Minister's judgment has been called into question. I think that's confirmed by the latest information. So it has already affected British politics. It's obviously affected the royal family. We know that's had an impact, and who knows what other revelations are going to come out of.
And we'll look more into that as the programme goes on. It's interesting you mentioned Keir Starmer there, the Prime Minister. He's desperate for a strong start to 2026, of course. We know that the Employment Rights Bill has now gone through. That's going to have a big effect on the economy and on workers, certainly. Angela Rayner and others would say it's a wonderful thing and there are lots of extra rights, but there's so many small business people, I'm sure in your constituency as well, Sir Christopher, who are really, really worried about this, especially with the national insurance increases and so on for employers. And the headline in the Daily Mail this morning, Reeves ruins Christmas, shops suffering a disastrous December after a £30 billion budget tax raid. This is the purse strings are being kept tight after Black Friday. Sales at the end of November surprisingly shunned. Shops say December has been disastrous, with a bleak outlook stretching into January. What do you think of that, Sir Christopher?
Well, I think that seems to me to be an accurate forecast, which chimes in with my own experience of talking to businesses in Christchurch, and people are really being squeezed, and we are on the brink of a recession, and employers are frightened about taking on any extra employees, and the message I keep getting is we're desperately trying to make ends meet, but we're not making we can't make any profit. And I was in the business yesterday discussing this with the proprietor, and he was saying he wants to invest, but he can't seem to find any way of making any money. And if businesses can't make any money, and then they're faced with these additional costs, and you haven't mentioned the the nightmare of the increase in business rates, which has really impacted, because not least because it was presented in a completely different way to the reality. And so how can businesses plan if they're being misled in that sort of way?
It's a very, very good point. And certainly, talking about planning, there are lots of businesses that will be worried about the story about Rachel Reeves saying it would be wrong to start writing future budgets, and she cannot rule out tax rises in the new year. Many businesses, including in your constituency, will feel they've been through enough on this, Sir Christopher.
Well, exactly. I mean, I was at the CBI dinner in November last year, one of the few MPs there, when I heard Rachel Reeves say that that was a clean slate coming, and that were no further tax increases down the line. She was trying to appeal to the business audience, and we know from what's happened since that what she said was completely wrong.
Yeah. I wonder what you think of West Midlands Police. This is another story this morning. Officers will not routinely detain activists who use the phrase globalise the Intifada, which has been widely adopted by pro-Palestinian protesters since the 7th of October terrorist attacks in 2023. This is the police force that banned Israeli fans from attending a football match. This was Maccabi Tel Aviv versus Aston Villa. Refused to commit to arresting all protesters who chant globalise the Intifada. This comes after the London Police Force, the Metropolitan Police and Manchester Police say they will arrest people. I mean, a lot of people worried about two-tier justice and two-tier policing in this country. What do you think about this?
Well, I think people are right to be worried. I think there seem to be a lot of double standards around. And I was shocked this week just to see one of my constituents who'd posted something on X, very outrageous thing he posted on it, but he's ended up with 18 months in prison for doing that. And I think the posting that he put was only seen by a few hundred people. And yet these other people you've been describing seem to be ignored by the police. And so there does seem to be increasingly a two-tier system, as we describe.
What's the situation in your constituency, and what is your opinion generally on a story that's annoyed an awful lot of our viewers and listeners about these local elections that are being postponed? We know the Conservatives did postpone some local elections as well when they were in power, but there are over 60 different councils that Labour is saying, well, actually, we can postpone these elections, and that is something that we're slightly going to force you into a corner to do about this. What do you think will happen, and what should happen?
Well, in my constituency, we're not directly affected, fortunately. But when people see elections being postponed unnecessarily, and they see that in about half of those elections, it's the Labour Party that's running the councils, which were going to come up for election. Those elections are now being deferred for one or 2 years. People start saying, well, what's happened to democracy in our country? And we would never allow a general election to be postponed beyond the 5-year maximum period. And it's only in the most extreme circumstances that we've allowed local elections to be delayed. And it doesn't seem to me that these latest delays are justified on any basis at all, except that it seems as though the government is trying to save its own skin.
Sir Christopher, thank you. That's Sir Christopher Chope there, who is a senior Conservative MP joining us this morning. He represents Christchurch. What do you think of what he was saying there? 0344 499 1000. Cancelling local elections. We've been talking about it for a couple of days. People still annoyed about it, and understandably so. Daniel's in Epsom. He's one of them, and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Daniel, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good morning, Peter.
Morning.
Do you know what it is? I'm 48. I've been around a long time, right? And I don't think I've ever... to me, it doesn't really matter whether you're on the left or the right or what kind of political party you kind of follow. I think this type of gerrymandering and kind of trying to change the rules once the game has started, you know, oh, I know what we'll do. We'll get teenagers to vote from the age of 16. Oh, I know what we'll do. We'll cancel all of the local elections.
Well, they're postponing them. They're not cancelling them. But my point, I think you make a really good point. I mean, democracy delayed is democracy denied, just like justice. And actually, even if there's an extra 2 years, well, why not have an election for 2 years, for example? If you're saying, well, OK, it's going to take 7 years rather than 5 years, well, have an election for 2 years. Let the people have their say.
Well, do you know what I did, Peter? I actually wrote to King Charles a couple of days ago when it was announced, because I actually would like one of the royal family to intervene. There's lots of things that they could intervene on, I think.
They're not going to, though, realistically, Daniel, are they?
No, but I think this type of issue is exactly the type of issue where they should intervene, because we've got a party that are almost gerrymandering and changing the rules once the game's underway. And they're trying to adjust things and change things because they know they're going to get tonked in the local elections, and that ain't right, Peter.
Do you think 2 years is going to make a difference? Do you think that that people are going to say, well, there's another 2 years, we are going to vote Labour? And what about the Conservatives as well? Are they running scared?
I think they are. I mean, I think what's become really clear is that the British majority are going to vote reform, right? We've seen the Con Lab Uniparty we've seen them fail. We've seen the country, mass immigration from the third world is basically destroying the fabric of our country before our eyes, and we can all see it. And the main two parties can't pee in our shoes anymore, Peter, and tell us it's raining. We won't have it no more. And people like me, my family, everyone I know, all of my friends, everyone's going to vote reform, because I personally think reform are the last chance for us to save Britain. The towns and cities we grew up in are ghettoised, crime-ridden toilets. Bearing in mind, Peter, we've been voting for 30 years against mass immigration.
And nobody's listened. The Conservatives haven't listened, and Labour haven't listened either. Well, they would argue they did some things, but I think you may well be right, Daniel, that reform will do very well in those elections. And thank you for your thoughts this morning. I appreciate it. There's so much more to discuss, and if you want to get your voice on the air, the number is 0344 499 1000. We'll go to the debate desk in a second. Zach Wagman, who's a Conservative councillor, I'll see what he thinks about these postponements, and Matthew Hulbert, former councillor actually, Liberal Democrat activist. They're going to be in the studio talking us through all these issues. Whatever you think, whatever your opinion, you think I'm talking nonsense, you ring me and let me know, or send me a voice note, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
I was sat in the tent and he was showing me through photos of his phone, scrolling through. This was barbaric, horrific stuff. Blokes going through walls in vehicles and then jumping out and shooting everyone. You know, his WhatsApp picture was him with a mask on, with a gun like that.
You're in a tent with this guy?
I'm in a tent with this guy, and actually he's just showing me this stuff. I'm just thinking, this is not the kind of bloke you want to be coming to the UK.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I want to thank Lorraine, who is one of our viewers and listeners, who has told me about a Green councillor being arrested. Now, that's something that a few people had heard about in our newsroom, but I hadn't. It had passed me by, and I do apologise for that. But I'm very happy to talk about it now, Lorraine. And Lorraine rightly points out that if this was a Reform UK councillor or a Conservative councillor, we would talk about it. So we're going to talk about it now. This is a Green Party councillor who's been arrested over alleged modern slavery and assault offences. This is Sohail Asghar, who's a councillor who represents the Greens on Lancashire County Council, arrested about 6 weeks ago, but it's now come to light. The Daily Mail reporting it. He's a taxi driver and he's been pictured with the party leader, Zach Polanski. I mean, that's fairly straightforward and unusual, but some of the allegations certainly against him, which I'm sure he denies, have resulted in him being suspended by the Green Party. He remains an independent councillor and part of the Progressive Lancashire group. He's been arrested on suspicion of slavery, servitude and forced or compulsory labour and common assault. I mean, they're very, very serious allegations, which I'm sure he denies. A 51-year-old woman and a man, 55, both from Accrington, have also been arrested on suspicion of slavery, servitude and forced or compulsory labour, and the 55-year-old was arrested for making threats to kill. Well, the Green Party have been contacted about this and said Councillor Asghar has voluntarily given up the Green Party whip because there is an investigation. This will remain the case until the investigation is completed. Well, if he's found guilty, I presume he's not going to return to the Green Party, but there we are. All three suspects have been bailed. A spokesman for Lancashire Police said a 29-year-old man from Accrington has been arrested on slavery, servitude and forced or compulsory labour and common assault charges, and then confirmed the rest of them. The arrests were made at a property in Accrington, and I'm very, very happy to report that, Lorraine. I literally just missed the story this morning. I can't know everything, and thank you very, very much indeed for highlighting that for us, and we're very, very happy to talk about that because it is a news story. We should talk about it. He's been praised for his amazing energy by Zach Polanski, and it does show that certainly the full force of the law should be on everyone. I'm sure he denies these allegations, and we'll keep an eye on that certainly. And Lorraine, thank you for highlighting that for me. Suze has been in touch and says clearly West Midlands Police have new masters are doing the bidding of certain unelected community leaders. Westminster is becoming irrelevant. Very interesting with West Midlands Police. We're going to talk about that on the debate desk a little bit later on. Colin says, what does the government have in mind? Banning the local elections, is this legal? Can this not be challenged in the High Court? If not, why not? And Mick, also in West Midlands Police, even in Somerset Police as well, have all been captured by the Intifada, trans and Islamist ideology to the detriment of democracy, in Mick's opinion. Well, let's talk about democracy. Let's talk about those local elections. We've got someone who's been a councillor in the studio. We've got someone who is a councillor in the studio. Matthew Hulbert, the Liberal Democrat activist. Good morning to you.
Hi.
And Zach Wagman, Conservative councillor for Stanmore. Great to have you in the studio. You're both doing well, I hope. What is the case in Stanmore? Will this affect you? Or and what do you think generally, Zach?
This will not affect me, fortunately, because Stanmore is in the London Borough of Harrow, and across London there's no change to our local government setup and to the elections that are happening next year. So I will be standing for re-election in Stanmore, as will my colleagues.
No doubt you're hopeful, but are you also realistic?
I'm hopeful and I'm realistic, and I think myself and my colleagues have done a good job in the 3.5 years.
I mean, you would say that, wouldn't you,
Exactly. I will be going out to do my best to hopefully get their votes again to go back in. I do think there's a much broader issue, as you mentioned, with these local elections being cancelled and these problems that we have here. They cancelled elections last year, and I think the
Conservatives did it as well when they were in power. They postponed elections, and they're not cancelled, they're postponed.
They're postponed, absolutely, and now they're going to be postponed a second year, and then there's a long democratic gap. The first time the Conservative Party did it was when there was a pandemic, and I think everyone was on board with understanding and accepting the reasons for that. Last year, I think if you were giving them the benefit of the doubt because of the reorganisation of local government, you could plausibly say, yeah, I can see the case for this. But I think now this second year, it just looks, it looks dodgy. It looks like Labour is worried they're going to lose or not win where they thought they might, and they want to avoid that. And they're putting it now on local council leaders to make the decisions, and it's a purely political thing. And quite frankly, anyone that was due to have an election...
they say it isn't political. They say it is much needed reorganisation of local government.
maybe local government needs reform, and maybe this reorganisation is needed. So absolutely, small R reform. Maybe this reorganisation is needed to a degree, but you still have elections. If the reorganisation is not ready, you need to do the elections, and you need to do them now, even if in a year's time there'll be a new council. People deserve democracy.
Matthew, I wonder what you think. I mean, 1 year we could just about stomach. Probably 2 years. I mean, my thought is, look, elections are expensive. They're a big thing. Not many people turn out. That doesn't necessarily mean they shouldn't be given the vote. If it's 2 years, I would say have another election. If you're going to have a temporary body or you're going to extend the current body, if you're a councillor for 5 years and that's the deal, and then they suddenly say, well, actually it's 7 years, that's big stuff.
It absolutely is, and I think Labour are running away from accountability on a number of fronts, including this week, changes to the way what's called the lobby are going to be running. These are the journalists who are going for the briefings.
I'm one of them.
You're one of them, and I think Labour, it's so illiberal, if I can put it that way, what they appear to be doing. And I think in elections, you're quite right. If people have a 5-year mandate, I think people can just about accept it going to 6 years on an issue like local government reorganisation, but I 7 years. I mean, what mandate do they then have? They no longer have a mandate from their electors, and
and even as people who, in one case in one case has been a local councillor, I think even you would agree with me that most people aren't entirely across what unitary authorities are, local authorities, parish councils, what they do, what they're for. And this reorganisation, to many people, most people will get out of this is, well, I should have had a vote and now I don't.
Absolutely, and I have to say, I mean, I'm wholly against this local government reorganisation, and
I mean, my patience is literally about 60 seconds.
Okay.
What is it?
So they're basically getting rid of a whole load of the borough and district councils, and from a purely party political point of view, that is where Lib Dems win. And so,
right.
and so for us, it's pretty devastating. To be honest with you, that is where we run 70 odd councils. Almost all of those are districts and boroughs, and those are the ones that are going. So for us, it's pretty.
So they're
bad.
doing sort of bigger councils.
Much bigger councils. We would say much more remote from the people they seek to serve. The Tories tried it and thankfully gave up on it. Labour seem insistent on this change.
There needs to be reform, small case R, of the local government system, because as you just alluded to, we have a problem when people have parish councillors, town councillors, borough councillors, county councillors, and their MP and the government, and
maybe a local mayor or something
local
as
mayors
well.
are coming.
Police and crime commissioner.
I'd get rid of the counties actually and leave the boroughs.
I think there needs to be sorting out of this. I think it needs to be much clearer. I think the current plan that the Labour Party has for these massive unitary authorities means that particularly in rural areas, your local council chamber, as it were, or headquarters, could be hours away from where you live, and it's really remote, and you end up with one medium-sized town effectively running the whole area, and these areas are very sort of diverse in terms of the nature of them, and that's a real problem with this.
And there are obviously town and county things that may well be lost and all of that. Paul in Cornwall says, reference delaying local council elections, the councillors cannot keep running their areas. The mandate has expired. You cannot give yourself another 2 years. Belgium ran for a couple of years without a government, and then they're deadlocked. These areas will have to manage without. Chris in Newbury says, every single councillor who votes to delay elections needs to be named and shamed. It's as simple as that. Is it as simple as that, Chris? Or should we... I mean, I spoke to James Cleverly yesterday, the shadow local government secretary, who was essentially saying that Conservative councils, Lib Dem councils, Reform UK councils could well be backed into a corner here where they have to say this is going to happen. He couldn't guarantee to me. I said, can you guarantee, you're against this as a party, can you guarantee no Conservative council is going to vote for this? And he said, well, no, I can't. I mean, is that a fair answer from him?
I think it's the only answer he can realistically give. I mean, we were saying earlier on in the green room there that, I mean, there's 1 or 2 Lib Dem councils that will also have theirs postponed. But I think we're...
And what Labour is saying is essentially it's up to the councils, but if you've got no real choice.
Right, and this government is very scared, poop scared, is that polite enough to say?
That's okay, you can say that.
Poop scared of losing seats across the board, losing seats to Reform, losing seats to the Greens, in some cases losing seats to the Lib Dems. And so they've decided to literally postpone democracy, and I think that's bad for us all.
Final thought on this from Zach.
I agree. I think it's forced local leaders down a hole they shouldn't have to go, because they're going to either probably have to stump up funds for this if the government might restrict funding for elections potentially, and quite frankly, if we've got to a point where the Secretary of State or the Minister is running scared of having elections, that tells you everything you need to know about the government.
Well, thank you both very much. We'll come back to this discussion and anything else you want to talk about. 0344 499 1000. Shane is in Sydney and says, "G'day Pete, have a Merry Christmas to you and your family. I love the show. It's very warm tonight." Oh yeah, all right Shane, all right. I've been sitting in front of the fan all afternoon. Oh, it must be dreadful for you. Shane, thank you. I know you're a regular viewer there in Sydney and you occasionally send us messages and we always delight to receive them. Mandy as well says, "Great show. I'd love to hear you on the permanent drive time slot. You're very kind in the new year. What are the plans for you?" The answer is we don't know just yet, but we should know hopefully in a few weeks' time. We know, of course, Jeremy Kyle is going to be in the hot seat for breakfast. Drives being sorted out, but lots of people contacting me and I'm sure other presenters about that as well. But Mandy, thank you for that. It's just a privilege to be on this station in any slot at any time, and it's great over the last 4.5 years to have been in the weekend slots as well. And just before we go to the break, I just want to use the presenter's privilege to say a very, very happy birthday to my nephew Charlie Cardwell, who is 13 years old today. He's a great young man. I'm proud of him, and he's a very mannerly young man who, even before I woke up this morning, has sent me a lovely message to say, "Uncle Peter, thank you very much for my card and present." So very happy birthday to you, Charlie, and we're very proud of you and think you're a wonderful young man. We will talk more about the issues of the day in just a second here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
John in Sutton has been in touch and says, "Peter, Labour are running scared of the voters. They're delaying elections. It shows how scared of reform they are. It is so wrong." Another person says, "It's a joke. We think we have some kind of world-leading democracy. More people didn't want Labour in power than did, and yet here we are, having looked so weak. We will be a much smaller target." Well, it's interesting, the whole PR debate. It's funny how...
Can I say a case for proportional
well,
representation?
It's funny, Matthew. I mean, you haven't convinced me of many things over the years we've been discussing, but actually PR, not because I'm a Reform UK supporter, actually completely politically homeless, but it is absurd that, for example, the Reform UK get 4.1 million votes and get 5 MPs, and the Liberal Democrats get 3.5 million votes and get 72 MPs. Right. Stephen Bromsgrove says local government reorganisation is political. It is about reducing electoral power of mostly Conservative and Lib Dem district councils within counties. Power and money will end up in unitaries centred on cities with a Labour vote, says Steve. Francis in Sussex says West Sussex County Council is one of the councils not having elections again this year. They were cancelled last year too. This is a Conservative council. Labour and Conservatives are both as bad as each other, says Francis. And Francis, I mean, that's a fair point, and I did make that point to the Conservative local government Shadow Local Government Secretary James Cleverly yesterday and said, you know, can you guarantee this? And he says he can't. I want to talk a little bit about the economy, because the front page of the Daily Mail, if I can find it, says that Rachel Reeves has ruined Christmas. Shops suffer disastrous December after a £30 billion budget tax raid. Rachel Reeves accused of ruining Christmas for retailers as her budget driving shoppers away from high streets. Customers scarred by the Chancellor's £30 billion tax raid are keeping their purse strings tight. Figures show. She would argue, of course, that our budget is marvellous and wonderful, and we are perhaps not realising just how great it is. I want to read out a message from Steve here in Kimberley in Nottinghamshire before I go back to Zach Wagman and Matthew Hulbert on the debate desk. Morning, Peter. Loving the show. Thank you, Steve. My partner Marcia, her 5 colleagues and 4 weekend staff were all made redundant yesterday. I'm really sorry to hear that. That is grim, just in the mouth of Christmas. Just a small nature reserve coffee shop. The council, Labour, introduced a parking fee of £3 in the spring, which reduced takings by roughly 60%. The owners haven't taken a wage since April. Yesterday they closed the doors and walked away after 19 years before the lease needs to be renewed in January, because it's just not worth the stress anymore. Steve, I'm really sorry to hear that. I'm really sorry to hear about Marcia and her 5 colleagues and 4 weekend staff. That is grim. And the thing is that I keep hearing this. I keep hearing this stuff. I keep hearing about small businesses, people with, you know, that is an absolutely classic small business there. You've got the owners, 5 colleagues, so you're looking at, 7 people there. That is actually 7 and fewer people. That's the vast majority of businesses in this country have that number of people involved with them. And Steve, your Christmas is going to be ruined by that. Marcia's Christmas is going to be ruined, and 9 other people, including those weekend staff who come in for a few hours a week. And that's maybe something that allows someone, a student, for example, to not be a burden on their parents who are perhaps dealing with the cost of living crisis, or someone who's maybe a bit older who has kids who wants to get out of the house and do a bit of work and have some sort of a job and help people and bring them, you know, teas and coffees and some nice lunches. I mean, that sounds like a really nice place by a nature reserve. And there are just loads of these stories of people contacting me saying, you know, there's a guy I spoke to a few days, I think it was last week actually, who was saying, I wanted to open a pizza restaurant. I've got two restaurants, 2 cafes. I want to open a pizza restaurant. That was going to be 8 people, new job, was going to put 400 grand into it. It was probably going to turn a profit on year 2. So investment, risk, the kind of risks that we need to take to grow the economy. And he said, Rachel Reeves and the budget and the national insurance rises and the 43 tax rises in the budget, we're just not going to do it anymore. So for Rachel Reeves to say that what she has done hasn't led to unemployment, it may not have led to huge businesses closing necessarily, but it's death by 1,000 cuts. It's that little nature reserve coffee shop. It's those things happening. It's all of those. It's all those stories. And I just wonder what you think about that, Matthew.
Well, I'm really sorry to hear about that as someone who has been through redundancy, albeit many years ago.
I have too.
Oh, it's
grim. It's horrible.
It's torrid.
It's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
I've been through it. I lost my job 3 times before I was 30. It was grim. It was horrible. And I really feel for those people.
It's so bad. And I've got a niece who's just turned 18, Tyra, bless her, a wonderful niece, who has applied everywhere in our locality for a local Saturday job. She's at college, but she wants to earn some of her own money. She's perfectly capable. She's a bright, wonderful young woman. Not a thing. And so these are torrid times, and I do wonder if those at the top of government recognise quite how torrid they are for people.
And Tara, who you mentioned there, she's someone who's trying, who's really, really trying, but there must be a lot of other people who try 1 or 2, get a rejection, saying, bit difficult maybe, and actually the attitude to work and the dignity of work is not being instilled in people, because it often can't be. There's someone who wants to work, there's someone who wants a bit of extra cash, who isn't, and these people as well want a bit of extra cash. Zach?
And this is so important in the instance, for example, of the nature reserve. I don't know where that is in the country, but the chances are it's somewhere full of nature and somewhere perhaps remote, and there therefore might not be so many jobs around. And as a result of these increases to the minimum wage, increases to national insurance contributions, the burden of the paperwork from the Employment Rights Bill, the government is killing the jobs that are the most important in retail.
And the council, in this instance, the council saying, well, actually, we're strapped for cash. we're going to do a £3 parking charge. And that £3 parking charge, you might say, oh, it's only £3. Well, actually, if you go out, you pay the admission fee, you pay the parking charge, you pay for lunch maybe at that, I'm sure, very lovely cafe for 4 people or your family or whatever it is. It all mounts up. And there are a lot of people who are saying, we're not going to get out in nature, we're not going to go to that. And there'll be more people who will now say, oh, that cafe is closed, no, we're not going to bother going there.
Exactly, and that £3 parking fee is probably more or less the same price as the cappuccino or the cup of tea that driver would have got. So it's a direct sort of option between the two. But no doubt many of the people that work there, exactly as you were saying about your family member, are students or kids at college and at school wanting to do the weekend job, people coming back into the workplace after having children. Often nature reserve and park cafes will give jobs to people with learning difficulties because they're nice environments to work in. It'll be people working small hours because they probably worked there for a long time, they're all local and they live in the village or the town. I don't know about this one, but that's generally the case.
Yeah, I've been to a load of those places and they're just nice. It's just a nice part of life. It's like when you go to a National Trust property or something and you just have a nice scone at the end of the day and there's some nice people, generally quite smiley and helpful.
I went to Beaver Castle in Leicestershire the other day with my wonderful friend Andy, and we had a lovely time and we went in the
Your wonderful friend Andy?
My wonderful friend Andy. Okay. Hi Andy, hope you're watching. Looking forward to seeing you.
All right, enough shout-outs.
On today.
It's
Christmas. You haven't mentioned my tie.
You've got a Christmas tie.
Thank you.
Zach is clearly hates Christmas.
Exactly, not in the festive.
Can I say something which you two might not agree with, which is...
It's about time.
It's about time.
It's 10:42, Matthew, so
that's why I'm here. Look, I think that public services need to be funded, and that comes from taxation. And so I've no problem with the idea of some taxes being raised for some people, but I think that should always be, those with the broadest shoulders. It should be those who can afford it the most. And so some may be totally against the idea of taxation. I'm not, because we need to fund vital public services.
Yeah, we do, but we've got the highest burden of taxation since the Second World War. Of a load of people, of millions of people in this country who pay no income tax. They'll pay VAT, they'll pay all sorts of other things. Zach, your perspective?
And fundamentally, that system we have at the moment is not working because the people losing out are the people like Marsha who have lost their job. It's the 4 weekend staff there that have lost their job, and that pays in the future because those weekend staff, as say may have been college students, will have learned really key skills that they now won't have, so they won't be able to enter the workplace.
And there'll be someone like Tara, your niece, there's be someone like that who they were thinking, do you know what, if someone leaves, their course is ending, they'll go into the workforce, we'll maybe bring in a 18-year-old Tara type person, bring her in and give her a bit of experience, then that goes in her CV. There are all these kind of ripple effects, the sort of butterfly effect of, I had a part-time job when I was about her age, a bit younger actually, in, I'm going to show my age here, a video rental shop.
I once worked in a video rental shop.
Did you work in a video, was it sort of Blockbuster or something like that?
Select Video.
Select Video.
Yeah.
Mine was DJ Video. It was an independent one.
Great fun.
So there was.
When I was starting off in radio, because I worked in straight journalism 20 years ago, and I was getting some radio shifts, and to help supplement my income, I worked in a video rental shop.
It certainly wouldn't have supplemented my income, I must say, because there wasn't much income anyway. Sean says, "Good morning, Peter. Keir Starmer needs to go. No question, but so does the Labour Party. If he was removed, I think he will call an election out of vindictiveness against those that are trying to remove him. Good. The Tories are no better. For every good policy they have, they sneak through a load of bad ones and through the back door. Very untrustworthy in Sean's opinion. We need to give Reform UK a chance, and even if they only achieve 10% of what they say, it will massively change our fortunes." Thank you to Rob in Hampshire as well. He says the main point regarding elections, other than that Labour, is that old councillors will be defining the new structures, not new councillors voting to the rule. That is a very, very interesting point there, Rob. Thank you. Tim in Suffolk says, the first time I've agreed with Matthew. My council is the one being changed. Our council offices will be 2 hours away. The government are scared. Agreeing with Matthew.
I made a breakthrough.
Agreeing with...
Merry Christmas.
Agreeing with Matthew Holbert. It must be Christmas time. My goodness. Stay with us here on Talk.
attitudes. We've got the world that Richard Dawkins wanted, and he promised us we had got rid of all of silly Christianity, we'd have flying cars. Can't see any of those. We have great rationality. There's people out there who think there are 87 genders, and we have peace on earth. Well, this time last week, I saw a crowd of people screaming Allahu Akbar on Park Lane in the centre of London, calling for the release of a convicted jihadist terrorist.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a bit later on in the programme, we're going to be looking at a new documentary, just a quick clip, which I'll play you now, actually, about UNRWA, which is the UN agency which has been working in the Palestinian territories. Now, this is a highly critical documentary because we know, and I've been highly critical of UNRWA, which is a body that's meant to be there to look after Palestinians. But the problem is, in the schools, the UNRWA schools, they're teaching people to hate Jews, hate Israelis. The whole infrastructure, the whole technical infrastructure of Hamas was under a hospital, which was an UNRWA hospital. Why did they not see the workmen coming and going? What are the excuses there? We'll be talking to an UNRWA spokesman a little bit later on, an interview that I will certainly be holding him to account. But let's just play a little bit of this documentary now. We have exclusive access to the filmmaker who will be talking to us too. And just with everything that's around in the UK, I mean, I talk about the Middle East a lot, but it's important here in the UK because of the levels of anti-Semitism, because of globalise the Intifada, because when people shout globalise the Intifada, for which they'll now be arrested in London and Manchester, but apparently not in, you know, Sussex or Leeds, which is absurd two-tier policing. The fact is that we're in a situation where we don't quite know what the rules are around this, but we know what's morally right. Let's take a look at this documentary.
The government of Israel is investing significant resources to portray the agency as a terrorist organization and our staff as terrorist or terrorist sympathizer. I ask that member states act to prevent the implementation of the legislation against UNRWA. Changes to UNRWA's mandate are the prerogative of the General Assembly, not individual member states.
Look at this picture. You can see Faisal Ali Muslim El Naami in the black shirt. Here he is seen loading with Jonathan Samerano into his car. A UNRWA employee. How does kidnapping and killing civilians fit into an UNRWA employee's job description?
Well, we'll be speaking to Dookie Dror, who is an Israeli filmmaker who has made that documentary a little bit later on. I'll also speak to Jonathan Fowler, who is a spokesman for UNRWA. That's going to be a little bit later on in the programme. And if you, like me, are as concerned here in the UK as you are about what happens in the Middle East, and you have any questions or thoughts you want to put to Jonathan or indeed Dookie, please let me know. 0344 499 1000. Zach Wagman, you know quite a lot about this. I know we actually initially spoke when you were in Israel. Tell us your thoughts on what you've seen and heard about this documentary and just UNRWA in general.
So I'm really pleased that this documentary is coming to light and that you and other colleagues of yours are bringing this important issue to the attention of the public, because people like myself and other people that support Israel have been talking about UNRWA for years and years. And then on the 7th of October, when there was the greatest genocide of Jewish people since the Holocaust, carried out by Hamas and their friends in Gaza, there were a number of UNRWA staff involved in that went into Israel, killed people and took people hostage. And then, as you mentioned, back in Gaza during the war, so much UNRWA infrastructure has been used as Hamas command and control centres, as Hamas planning centres, and indeed to store or keep hostages, both dead and alive, in in UNRWA sites. You know, I have no doubt there were some people that joined UNRWA with good intentions to look after people in Gaza that needed their help, but UNRWA has now become a front for Hamas. You know, the previous government and Donald Trump has did the right thing by taking funding away from them, but now we're back in the case where this government restored funding to UNRWA.
That was David Lammy when he was Foreign Secretary, and in fact Ian has a voice note on this which we'll play a little bit later on in the programme. Ian and Nick have been in touch, a few other people as well, with voice notes. We'll play Ian's voice note a little bit later on, but he just simply raised the point and said, didn't Starmer and Lammy reinstate funding for UNRWA? So we have UK taxpayers who are paying for this organisation. Now they would argue, I'm sure, that they are bringing aid to Palestinians who need it. What would you say to that?
Well, fundamentally that is untrue, because the Gaza Humanitarian Fund or Foundation, which is set up by the government of Israel and the government of the United States for most of the last year, has been the only organisation that's been given the credentials and the access to deliver aid to the Palestinian people, to the Gazan people, and UNRWA refused to work with them out of principle. So UNRWA aid was sitting waiting. That was a real shame because there were people that needed to that, but that was because of UNRWA's intransigence. The reality is, while UNRWA may have good intentions, or people at UNRWA may individually be good people, they have been taken over by Hamas, they've been infested by people that have terrorist ideology, and it needs to stop right now.
We're going to get into all of this a little bit later on, just on what's happening in the UK, and please do comment on UNRWA if you want to, Matthew, but in terms of what's happening in the UK, and two police forces, London, the Metropolitan Police, and Manchester Police Chief, saying globalise the Intifada could be cause for arrest. What do you make of that, Matthew?
Well, so first on UNRWA, I am very saddened to hear these allegations about UNRWA, because for the primary reason that there's no doubt that Gaza and the Palestinian people need aid after being absolutely devastated in recent years. I don't personally care who is providing that aid, but someone needs to be providing it. So that's my thought.
Feel the same way, yeah.
Yeah, that's my thought on that. Look, I mean, I'm very, very worried indeed about the rising levels of anti-Semitism across this country. I think it's an increasing problem, and it's a problem that we all need to be very cognizant of. The attacks here in the UK in October, what happened at Bondi Beach, truly appalling. And I think it's not just enough to condemn anti-Semitism. We have to actively fight against it in any kind of peaceful way that we have. And so, I do quite, I'm not a free speech absolutist, as you know, Peter, but I do broadly believe in the concept of people being generally free to say what they want.
The problem is,
but
that
not if it's... Yeah.
Well, if you shout globalise the Intifada and then someone goes along and globalises the Intifada...
Well, quite.
And does what they do in Bondi Beach, well, that's incitement. And again, going to bang on about it again, not going to stop banging on about it until he's arrested, not going to stop banging on about it until he's charged. Pascal Robinson Foster, who is the lead singer of Bob Vylan, shouted death, death to the IDF. We have asked Avon and Somerset Police, will they arrest him? What's happening? Will he be charged? And Sarah Crew, who is the Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset Police, I've asked her on my programme many times. I emailed them again last night and her press office and asked her on. It is now 173 days since he shouted death, death to the IDF. There are 7 days left for Sarah Crew and her colleagues and the Crown Prosecution Service to do the right thing and charge him with incitement. And what happens is that there's a 6-month limit on a public order offence, which is how they say they're treating it. And if they don't charge him within 7 days, well then it's going to go away. And I think they're running the clock down. Sarah, am I wrong? Are you running the clock down? Are you going to disturb your Christmas, the Crew family Christmas, to arrest and perhaps charge Pascal Robinson Foster? Is that what you're going to do? Is that what the CPS are going to do? I'd love to know, and I've asked you these questions, and I've also asked the question to your press office, which in fairness have been pretty helpful so far, but they haven't answered the question. Do you think globalise the Intifada is something, if you're sitting in Avon and Somerset, if you go to Glastonbury next year, the next time Glastonbury's on, and shout globalise the Intifada from the stage, would someone be arrested for that? Would they be charged? We don't have answers to these questions. 173 days. Gonna keep banging on about it. You've got 7 days to do the right thing, Sarah, and you can come onto my programme anytime. Matthew.
But this is why I'd say that people who do declare themselves free speech absolutists are a bit silly, because actually we do need...
We have free speech within the law.
Yeah, within the law. We do have to
law.
abide within the law. And I'd also say a bit more broadly, and perhaps this is a little bit more controversial, although I hope not, that actually society also decides its mores, what it finds acceptable or not, and we all have to broadly live within that.
Well, here's an interesting point, actually. The campaign against anti-Semitism, one of the things I've had most reaction to, actually, within when I broadcast it yesterday, they tweeted that a photograph of someone reading Mein Kampf on the tube. Right. Now, I once got Mein Kampf out of the library. I actually didn't read it, but it wouldn't be something I would do in a public sphere because it would be offensive to people. What do you think, Matthew?
I agree. I think I'd move away if I was someone on the tube that was doing that. I mean,
we need to understand the Nazis, but if the very presence of that book. I mean, if you'd been in that tube, if you don't mind me asking you, as a Jewish man, if you'd been in that tube, what would you have done?
I would have been deeply disturbed. Yeah, the truth was, I don't know what I would have done. I like to think I would have said to this person, sorry, do you know what you're reading there and the connotation of really...
What if he then said, actually, I want to understand how evil Hitler was. I want to understand his mentality and his Nazism and why he was so evil. And I'm maybe an academic looking into this, not necessarily, a neo-Nazi.
But then don't read it on the tube, right?
And I think that it's absolutely right. History teachers, historians need to understand it, and they might sit in a library or university and read it. And maybe this person was a history professor, whatever. I suspect probably not. And I think most of us, I don't know if I was speaking out of turn. I said, I've not read Mein Kampf. I imagine neither of you have. We all know that Hitler was a bad person, and we understand
we know
why.
What's in it.
You don't need to read it to know that. And it is people like that, it is people like Bob Villan, and it is people that are shouting to globalise the Intifada, which is why yesterday when I went to my synagogue, there were 3 police officers inside for the duration of it. It's the reason why, I know a number of people...
And outside Jewish schools too, right?
Exactly, and that's been the case for years. It's the reason why I know a number of people that are not celebrating Hanukkah this week in public places. And it is because of that there's people that are scared to go out their house with good reason, because these people have been calling to globalise the Intifada for 2 years, and they've got it in Manchester, they got it at Bondi Beach, and really the only question now is where will they get it next?
Yeah, it's a very, very good point. Listen, Merry Christmas to you both. Thank you for coming into the studio, and to your friend Andy as well. I hope you have a nice Christmas, and to you and your family. Zach as well, Zach Wagman there, who is a Conservative councillor in Stanmore, Matthew Hilbert, Lib Dem activist, and someone who I've actually agreed with an astonishing amount this morning. Which
what a
is
bromance.
Very weird, very weird. Maybe it's the Christmas time. Maybe that's blinding me to your inherent wokeness. There we are, a little sting in the tail there. Listen, thank you both very much, and happy Christmas and happy Hanukkah as well to you, Zach, too. Lots to discuss in the next hour. We're going to be speaking to Vanessa Frick, who is the Justice Advisor for Reform UK, former prison governor. This is Labour exempting West African prison officers from deportation to prevent the prison system from collapsing. This is fascinating because we have treated prison officers so badly over the past few years because we pay them such a rubbish wage. We have been importing loads of people, including from West African nations, some of whose command of the English language isn't fantastic, to be prison officers. Now they're falling below the threshold for what is needed to stay in this country, and they're saying, well, you're going to deport me now. This is just crazy policy from the Ministry of Justice and from the Home Office. It doesn't make any sense. We're going to get to the bottom of it with Vanessa, who will know all about it in just a few minutes' time. We're also going to be talking about UNRWA and, of course, those local government elections being postponed. There is so much to talk about. I want to make sure you're part of the conversation. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. So stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Lots to discuss between now and 12:30. You've been getting in touch with so many different points on things like local government, elections being postponed, a story we're going to talk about in a second about prisons and prison officers as well, many of them coming from West Africa. We've treated prison officers really badly in the last few years. We've pensioned off a lot of people who've done a really good job for a long time, and there are a lot of young officers, and particularly from West African nations as well, who've come into this country to be prison officers. Is that the right thing? I think we need really good people. I think we need to pay them well, and we need our prisons run really, really well, because look, if you go to prison, it costs about 55 grand a year to keep you in there. When you get out, and basically everybody's going to get out unless you're Rose West or Wayne Couzens or one of those people, if you're probably going to get out, and I want you to be a citizen who has a roof over your head, a job, and contributes to the economy and doesn't commit crime again. Therefore, we need good prisons and good prison officers. We'll talk to Vanessa Frake in just a second about all of that. We'll also talk about a new documentary, Unraveling UNRWA, which is the aid agency that's meant to help Palestinians. Do they? Or are they just in the business of, at least some of them anyway, being members of Hamas and killing Jews? It is a very, very interesting documentary. We're going to talk about that, especially with all the anti-Semitism in the UK. And these issues about globalising the Intifada as well, that phrase being outlawed in London and Manchester, but perhaps not elsewhere. Loads of people have been in touch. We'll get you on the air between now and 12:30. Loads to discuss. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 7222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, 0344 499 1000. Keep them to less than a minute, please. You can ring me on that number, and you can also send me a WhatsApp text message on that number too. Plenty to discuss between now and 12:30 here on Talk. David says, surely the West Midlands Police should be one of the first to implement arrests for anti-Semitic chants, just to prove they're being even-handed with all members of the public. That's a very, very good point. Also, lots on UNRWA as well. Trevor in Harrow says, good morning to you, Peter. Very happy Christmas. And to you too, Trevor. Just a quick question. If it can be proved that David Lammy knew he was protecting UNRWA that was controlled by Hamas, can charges be brought against him at a later date retrospectively? Surely it must be against the law. I don't think it is, but Trevor raises a very, very good point to say that actually, as Foreign Secretary, David Lammy was someone who gave the green light for funding for an organisation that had at least some terrorists in it, and were teaching children in Palestinian schools to hate Jews. We'll talk about that later on. We will have a spokesman from UNRWA on as well, and he will have his perspective too. Local government as well. Reorganisation is political, says Stephen. It is about reducing electoral power of mostly Conservative and Lib Dem district councils within counties. Power and money will end up to unitary authorities centred on cities with a Labour vote. That's Steve in Bromsgrove. I want to play a couple of voice notes. First one from Nick.
Morning, Peter. It's Nick from Loughborough. I'm calling upon your greater knowledge of our perceived political constitution to see if you can assuage my worries that, given Starmer's willingness to attempt to cancel local elections, is there any possibility with his large majority, large but thin majority, he could in fact alter the Parliament Act and extend the term of this government, this current administration? I'm concerned, and I think you might be able to answer that.
Well, Nick,
have a good day, Peter.
Nick, thank you very much for that, and have a good day yourself. I really appreciate the question. In theory, yes, elections were cancelled, for example, during the Second World War. It would take a huge, huge thing to do it. I don't think it's possible, and I think that is something that Starmer would be. It is hypothetically possible. It is. He's got a huge majority, and he could, in theory, do it. To get it through, though, he would need a lot of his MPs, and I think a lot of them would be against it as well. If he can carry all 400 odd of them, well, maybe. But also, I think so many of them would say, actually, this is not okay. A lot of their constituents would say that's not okay. They're going to lose their seats. There's no doubt about that. Some of them, anyway. The Labour majority will not be the same after the next election. If the polls stay the same, a lot can happen in 3 years. So, Nick, the answer is hypothetically, yes. Hypothetically, basically, the Prime Minister can do sort of-ish what he wants. I don't think he will. But maybe I'm not cynical enough. I don't know. And certainly 5 years is about the absolute limit. And actually, Tony Blair used to go a lot earlier. He would do sort of 4 years and things like that because he was so confident he was going to win. Butler Brown as well. Gordon Brown could have had an election in 2007, didn't. And what we have often is people going a little bit earlier than they need to. Rishi Sunak, for example, could have waited all the way to about this time of the year. 13th of December was the limit, but he called the election, of course, that was in July, so he went 6 months early for that, because a lot of the time, I'm told anyway, he just knew the Rwanda plan wasn't going to work. Anyway, listen, there's a lot in this. Just want to very quickly play one more voice note on the UNRWA matter. This is from Ian.
Hi Peter, it's Ian from East Grinstead. Talking about UNRWA, wasn't it Lammy and Starmer that reinstated the funding for UNRWA to help bolster their anti-Semitic views?
They did bolster that. I mean, both David Lammy and Keir Starmer would deny being anti-Semitic, I'm sure, Ian, but you're absolutely entitled to your opinion on that. We'll talk about this more in just a few minutes' time, actually. If you stay tuned, we're going to look into that documentary and talk about anti-Semitism in the country. But in the meantime, I want to speak to an expert in the field on prisons. This is a big story which is very, very important. Vanessa Frake is with us, the Justice Advisor to Reform UK. She's a former prison governor herself. Good morning, Vanessa.
Morning, Peter.
Can you just talk us through this? I think I know what I'm talking about, but you actually know what you're talking about. And I wonder if you can talk us through what is happening. Are you okay there? You've got a bit of a cough?
Yeah, sorry. Must have been the shock of seeing you, sorry.
That's all right. Well, I often have that effect on women. The point is, Vanessa, that can you just talk us through the what this problem is because of prison officers being pensioned off, younger prisoners being brought in, the fact that there just isn't enough money in the system, people aren't paid enough. You got people from West Africa who are being brought in, then they're being told, well, you don't earn enough, so you got to go home.
Yeah, I mean, it's another calamity Lammy, isn't it, really? I mean, the government increased the required amount for foreigners to earn in this country to 41,000. Well, a basic prison officer wage is between £30,000 and £33,000. So because nobody in this country wants to do the job, and I have to say who can blame them, the government began in 2023 recruiting many prison officers from West Africa, Nigeria and Ghana in particular. And, so what was actually going to happen is that all of those, some 2,500 that have now been recruited since 2023, will have be kicked out of the country, basically, which would have left our prisons yet in deeper crisis than they're already in. And there's several jails who rely totally on these migrant workers. Bullingdon, Liverpool, Guys Marsh, Swellside and Elmley in particular, where it's suggested that up to 20% of the staff there are from Nigeria or Ghana. Now, the issue is that reports on the quality of these migrant staff are varied. I've heard stories of from various sources that many of these individuals who are coming over can barely write English, barely speak English.
So how would you get through a test to be a prison officer? I mean, prison officers are a really important job. It's not a job that we value nearly enough. And if you can't read or write English properly, well, what on earth is going on? Why are these people in these prisons? It's crazy.
Well, look, the prison service is so desperate for staff. I think last year they recruited something like 2,400 and 2,800 left.
Right.
That's the issue here. And so the level is being lowered to allow these people to come in. And also there is a cultural issue. I heard on the grapevine that at one particular prison in a meeting, an individual who'd come over from Nigeria said, well, what's the maximum bribe we can take in this
wow.
over here? So you have to sort of wonder what's happening. And instead of allowing these people to stay even longer, why don't the government look at what's causing staff retention to fall so drastically in this country? Why nobody wants to join.
Well, what are those reasons? Just talk us through that. Why do people not want to be prison officers, and why are they not staying? Because I've seen, I used to work in the Ministry of Justice, as you know. I've talked to a load of prison officers, prison governors. I've watched a load of documentaries about it. It's something I'm genuinely interested in, and it just seems like a really tough job, and one that just is not paid enough. And also, it seems now prisons are an even worse place to work for lots of reasons. Just talk us through that, Vanessa.
I mean, you're absolutely right, Peter. You hit the nail on the head. With overcrowding causes violence, causes lack of purposeful activities. The vetting is very poor. The training, 5 weeks to become a prison officer, which is probably the lowest in Europe. Yep. Some it takes like 6 months to become. There's a lot you have to learn to become a prison officer and to be able to deal with violence, deal with aggression. And
there's a lot of emotional energy as well in that job. You're not just turning up and locking a few doors and moving a few people around. You've got to be a really smart person with emotional intelligence as well to realise, is this going to kick off? What's the mood of these wings? Is this prisoner having a bad day, or are they about to smack me or someone else, or harm themselves? There's so much of that kind of, like, what people might call soft skills, but they're actually so important as well, aren't they? We think of hardened screws, and we think of incredibly tough people, and I'll be brutally honest, Vanessa, you're not someone I would mess with, but nonetheless, you've got to have a lot of that emotional energy too.
Yeah, I mean, you as a prison officer, you see things on a daily basis many people don't see in a lifetime, and I'm talking suicides, dreadful self-harm, assaults on you even, and that is a lot to contend with. And when I joined the service, I looked at it as a career, and many others who joined around the same time as I did too. Now it's a stopgap. It's something to do while they're looking for a real job. And that is a shame, but we've allowed our prison service to become like that. We haven't invested in it. We haven't invested in the staff. We pay them poorly. We expect them to turn up and not know whether they're going back to their families in the evening unharmed or not. And that's a lot to deal with when you think somebody can apply for the job at 17 and start on their 18th birthday. And even still, at youth unemployment at 14.5%, we still can't recruit these people. Yeah.
So you're the Justice Advisor to Reform UK. There's no magic wand to be waved on this, but on the specific issue of this immigration issue, the Home Office clearly not talking to the Ministry of Justice in this, the left hand not doing what the right hand is doing. What would you say to solve this specific problem? Is there a sticking plaster that could sort that in the next few months, or is this just going to have to be a systematic look at the prison system, which every government, including the one I was part of, says it's going to do and never really does, because prison reform is expensive and deeply unsexy.
Yeah, and it's not a vote winner. And like you said earlier, Peter, what I wanted was for people who were convicted to come out and be part of society again, not to come out and be better criminals in our societies. And that is how bad our prisons are. Look, you can't just take these 2,500 migrant workers and ship them out, because our prisons, especially the big ones, Bullingdon, Liverpool, Elmley and Swaleside, would fall on their knees. And, I think they've had a stay of execution till the end of 2026, but they've got 12 months to look at what they pay staff, how they support staff, how they train staff, and most importantly, how they vet staff.
Vanessa, lots of wisdom there. Thank you very much indeed. Merry Christmas to you and your family as well. That is Vanessa Freck there, Justice Advisor for Reform UK, former prison governor herself. And this is just a shambles. It is just an absolute shambles. You've got a major immigration issue here with West African people coming in who aren't paid enough. You're filling the gaps in the prison service. There are perhaps some of them, I'm sure, do a great job and are very good, but a lot of them don't understand our prison culture, never mind the culture of this country, and the fact fact that they're now being told, oh, right, you got to go, which some people will certainly support, that they shouldn't be here perhaps in the first place if they don't earn enough money. But actually, what's the prison service going to do? How are we going to get enough prison officers? I thought Vanessa laid that out very, very well there. What do you think about all of this? 0344 499 1000. Loads of people getting in touch about all sorts of issues, including Nick in Oxford. He says, morning Peter, I've never understood why councils have to be politically affiliated down party lines. The waste is astronomical when incompetent local councillors get elected and undertake idiotic vanity projects like in my city, Oxford, left-wing and implementing insane net zero nonsense. Make local councils about doing the basics right, roads, parks, local services, etc. Great show as ever, says Nick. Yeah, just collect the bins, guys. In a number of areas now as well, there are about 5 areas of London where if you are part of that local council, well, they can raise your council tax over 5% to give money to the north of England. Very strange thing. It's only happening in relatively well-off overall areas of London at the moment, but I'm telling you, they're coming for you in other parts of the country as well, let me tell you. Tony here in sunny Devon says, Tony, beautiful day here in London too. Thank you for that, Tony. I'm actually going ice skating later, and it'll be cool, but it'll be bright, much like me. Tony says, cancelled elections, no representation equals no taxation. Colin says, if someone challenges Starmer for the leadership, he will call a general election, mark my words. Matt in Brighton, what do you expect to happen to small businesses and jobs when people making the decisions have never run a business or hired anyone with their own money? They have no idea. It's ridiculous, says Matt in Brighton. Ash, who was born and bred in Slough, says, morning Cardi P, morning Ash. Matthew always argues for more tax, Matthew Hulbert, who was on a little bit earlier, argues for more tax on some people. Maybe the next time you could ask him, is he a net contributor to the country? If not, is he a burden on the vulnerable and those in poverty? Could I suggest next year he concentrates his zeal on starting a world-class business, employing many people with outstanding remuneration packages and actually contributing? Well, I don't know if he's a net contributor or not. I'm happy to ask him the next time. Paul in Horsham says, well done for raising this in regard to UNRWA. We're going to talk about this in a few minutes' time, actually. Also look at the Brink podcast on YouTube with Jake Wallace-Simons and Andrew Fox. They're both brilliant. Many of the aid agencies are also in bed with Hamas. Great show, says Paul in Horsham. David Kent says, hi Peter, great show. The issue around reading Mein Kampf on the tube, love to hear your views on this, by the way. In my opinion, is about the intention and not the action. I'm very pro-Israel, but I've recently taken to reading books about Hamas and Palestine to educate myself. But it does not mean I sympathise. I will always remain pro-Israel and pro the Jewish people until they can live peacefully without fear. Great show, says David Kent. I must say, I've had probably hundreds, if maybe not thousands, but certainly hundreds of messages on Twitter after this story that we did yesterday. There's a photo, which you can see on the screen now actually, of a man reading Mein Kampf, Hitler's book, on the tube in London. The campaign against anti-Semitism put it out, and they put the strapline, when hate becomes casual. Now, we don't know, the man's face is blurred, by the way. We have no idea if that man is simply reading about Hitler because he wants to know more about Nazism, whether he's pro what Hitler says, whether he's against it and trying to educate himself, but he did it on the tube. What do you think about this? Is that fine? Is that reasonable? He's only reading a book. What does it matter? Or if you're a Jewish person, or maybe not a Jewish person, would you be desperately offended by that? Would you go up to him and say, look, I don't think you should be reading that on the tube? What would you do in that situation? If nothing, would you sit there and tut? What would you do? 0344 499 1000. We'll take calls, texts, tweets and voice notes after the break here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Paul, who says these prison guards need deporting. Their security risk and could explain wrongful prison releases and corruption. Get real, Britain, says Paul. Well, certainly we know there have been a number of arrests of English people from this country, born in this country, for corruption in prison recently. Good reporting in the Sunday Times of all of that. But Paul, I think, makes a good point there as well. Barry says the young Indigenous population of this country should consider joining the prison service should there be a conflict with Russia. It will be a reserve occupation, says Barry. Well, I agree with you, but tell that to them. Are they actually going to do that? Are they going to see that as a career that they want to do? Would a general strike make Starmer call an election, says Mega Vegan? Neil in Labour Obliterated Wales says, Peter, why would Labour MPs oppose Starmer keeping them in a job for longer by extending his term? I don't get your reasoning, as all MPs care about is themselves. Well, yeah, but I think they also got to react to public pressure too, and if there's enough of us and enough people who say, look, no, sorry, you've got to stick to these term limits, well, I think it's going to be a big problem, much bigger than for local councils. So I suppose that's my reasoning in all of that. I do think some of them, not all of them, certainly, but there are some Labour MPs, yes, I know this is an unpopular thing to say, there's some Labour MPs who have a conscience and are good people. One of them, for example, is Joni Reid, who is the Scottish MP, who is chairwoman of the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, chairwoman of the All-Party Parliamentary Group Against Anti-Semitism, and she is someone I admire very much for saying unpopular things within a party where a lot of people would like her to sit down and shut up, and I think she's a perfectly reasonable person. She doesn't do everything right, don't agree with every single thing she says and does. Of course I don't. I'll challenge her robustly if I interview her, as I expect I will at some stage again. But listen, they're not all bad people. Not all politicians are bad people. A lot of them are. Tracy says, I hate the Labour government racial thieves. She's killing everything, says Tracy. I want to talk as well about what is happening with two-tier policing, about West Midlands Police as well. Michael is in Birmingham, and I know you have some thoughts on this, Michael. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. What would you like to say, Michael?
Yeah, I might pivot a bit during this call, but yeah, I'm a Birmingham resident, and I'm looking not to be a Birmingham resident.
Okay.
I have a heritage. Well, it's Jewish. I'm not practicing, but I've got partially Jewish. I certainly don't feel safe, and I don't feel the West Midlands Police would give me a fair shake and a protection from the wider community. Definitely not. And I've got.
You just have no confidence in them, Michael.
No, none whatsoever. None whatsoever. I think Birmingham's a dangerous place for people. You know, no one would be able to tell anything about me by my appearance, but you know,
a lot of people aren't in that situation, and nor should they have to be as well. You know, there's loads of people who wear the skull cap, for example, or wear religious dress, and they'll be at risk.
Exactly, but you know, it's not just people of my background that are at risk to the wider community. It's lots of other things, and the West Midlands Police are absolutely pathetic. And if you're listening, they should be fired or sacked. And even if they come and arrest me, I don't know.
Well, I don't think they're going to, Michael. But what do you think about the Assistant Chief Constable there, who gave evidence to Parliament that turned out to be wrong? He's been recalled, as has the Chief Constable. This is about Maccabi Tel Aviv and the fact that Israeli fans were banned. It was based on false intelligence, as far as I can work out, and they've been recalled for Parliament.
Well, look, I knew that intelligence was false from the word go. I remember the Amsterdam incident very well, and I knew the way that it went down. It was the Maccabi fans that were being attacked. They certainly weren't the instigators. And that man, well, I call it, he's just a liar. And he should be fired and prosecuted. But what this is, Peter, which is slightly pivots, you're going in your UNRWA thing.
Yeah.
This shows that the left, the swivel-eyed left, have infiltrated so many organisations, not just UNRWA, but charity workers. Over in the US, you've got the judge that's recently been prosecuted for the anti-ICE stuff. You've got the Washington police chief who's just fallen on their sword because they're, you know, a useless left-wing person. And the left have infiltrated so many places with their ideology that the whole swamp needs draining, to be honest with you. And that includes local authorities, central government, everywhere. And going back to the Mein Kampf thing, you know, I don't know why the guy was reading Mein Kampf, but we have to be careful about this. It's not a banned publication.
That's right.
Because if you castigate him for that, The next thing you'll get is people being attacked for reading a Reform manifesto on the tube. Trust me.
How would you feel as a Jewish person if you saw someone reading Mein Kampf on a public transport with you? Would you do anything? Would you raise an eyebrow? Would you talk to them? Or would you just leave them to get on with their reading?
No, because I don't know the motivations. I mean, it could be so many people are called Nazis these days. Maybe the guy's a Reform voter trying to find out what a Nazi actually is. So you get what I mean? So I do. Motivations. I mean, look, if it was anti-Semitic, he just needs a slap. But if there was something behind it, you know, I'll give the person the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Okay.
And if the publication's that bad, well, just ban it.
Okay, Michael, thank you for that perspective. Really appreciate it. That's Michael in Birmingham. Fee in Berkshire has been in touch as well on the guy reading Mein Kampf on the tube. Is there anything wrong with that, Fee?
I think it's down to people's opinions, but I had an experience when I worked in Limerick for a time, a long time ago, and I was reading a biography written by Chairman Mao's personal physician and doctor of 35 plus years, and the title was Chairman Mao's Life. But it was based through this guy's experience. And because I didn't know anyone, I would go and sit in a bar of a weekend, take my book and read. And I actually had people coming up to me and asking me about the book. Was it interesting? And it led to some really good conversations and debates about dictatorship and things like that. And I learned a lot from it. I didn't really understand concubines and the propaganda that Chairman Mao did in order to make China look fantastic and all that sort of stuff. So it was just interesting. And I think people maybe should just ask the question, what's the book like? You know.
Well, that's a fair point. And actually, Fee, this is not the same. I'm not saying this is the same at all. It's not to do with dictators. It's not to do with totalitarianism. It's just to do with things that are offensive in public to some people. So I have a friend. I've just stayed with him in Washington. Really, really nice people. They are Democrats, local Democrats. One of them was actually the sort of father of the family was the mayor of the town. He's a Democrat. And they love the royals. And when I go over, or when I see them sometimes post over, you know, William and Kate get married, I send them a mug or a magnet, or they love all that stuff. You know, the supplements that fall out of the paper, you know, sort of the year of the royals or whatever. I send them all that. And I love all the American kind of, you know, T-shirts and caps and all the kind of election presidential stuff of all sorts of all shades as well. And this Democrat, this dyed-in-the-wool person who, you know, campaigned for Hillary Clinton, campaigned for Barack Obama, bought me a MAGA hat and sent me a MAGA hat, the Make America Great Again. And we met up in Dublin, and I put the cap on in a pub in Dublin, and people thought, oh, it's just a bit funny, you know, Make America Great Again hat and all the rest of it. And these two Americans came up to me and were just like, that's really offensive. I can't believe you're wearing that hat. Oh my God, he's wearing that hat. And I said, look, it's just a joke. We're just having a chat. You know, it's not that I believe that or don't believe that or whatever. That's just what we're chatting about. And they just went, it's not a joke to us, and walked off. And I sort of thought, well,
I appreciate some people can be offended by things like that, but I think you shouldn't base an opinion on someone just by them reading a specific book.
I think
maybe ask the question, maybe go up to them and say, you know, is it just out of interest, or you know what, and have that conversation and debate. I had some fascinating conversation, and actually one of them led to me going to a house party with a load of them that night. So I had a really good evening.
Well, it sounds like it opened a lot of doors. I actually have a friend as well who has a very dictatorial cat who he nicknames Chairman Meow. There we go. Happy Christmas, Fee. Thanks for that. We're going to talk in just a second about this new documentary about UNRWA, the UN agency in the Palestinian territories. We're going to talk to the filmmaker, and we're going to talk to an UNRWA spokesman as well, but in the next few minutes. So stay with us here on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Paul in Kent, very annoyed about the prisons issue, says, why don't we employ many veterans that are unemployed for the prison services? That would be a good idea, and certainly they're welcome to apply for those jobs, and they should. They'd be really, really good, and they'd have a lot of the skill sets that be needed, Paul. It's a good idea. Another Paul says, get rid of these prison officers, bring in the army on a temporary basis and sort out the prisons whilst employing suitable candidates and include a career oath. Also, James says, please stop the world. I like to get off. A man reading a book on the tube, outrageous, but a woman walking down the street in full head covering is fine, says James. Lots of people getting in touch about that. Sarah says, I've been reading bits of the Quran. It doesn't mean to say I'm a Muslim or agree with it. A person quite often reads out of curiosity. Very good point there. And Steve says, regarding a person reading Mein Kampf on the tube, I would like to leave it to him, as tubes are often overcrowded. If the tube is uncrowded, I might strike up a conversation, see what he thinks of the book, find out what drove him to read it. If the discussion demonstrated disagreement, then I would leave the chat agreeing to disagree. Ooh, disagree without being disagreeable, Steve? It'll never catch on. Right then, I want to talk about UNRWA. This is the UN agency which we, the British taxpayer, have been giving money to. It operates in the Palestinian territories, and what we've seen is that 9 staff members were fired after an investigation found they may have been involved in the 7th of October attacks in Israel. We also know that Al-Shifa Hospital, which was the largest hospital in the Gaza Strip, was over the technical infrastructure of what Hamas were using. So this is an UNRWA hospital, and all the technical infrastructure, all the wires and cables were underneath that hospital. There are UNRWA schools, for example, where children are taught to hate Israelis and to hate Jews. Let's have a little look at this documentary. It is called Unraveling UNRWA. We'll talk to the filmmaker who made it in just a second.
The government of Israel is investing significant resources to portray the agency as a terrorist organization and our staff as terrorists or terrorist sympathizer. I ask that member states act to prevent the implementation of the legislation against UNRWA. Changes to UNRWA's mandate are the prerogative of the General Assembly, not individual member states.
Look at this picture. You can see Faisal Ali Muslim El Naami in the black shirt. Here he is seen loading with Jonathan Samerano into his car. An UNRWA employee. How does kidnapping and killing civilians fit into an UNRWA employee's job description?
Well, Dookie Drawer is the filmmaker who has made it and joins me now. Dookie, you're very welcome to the programme. Can you just tell me your motivation and the process of making this important documentary?
Well, thank you for having me, Peter. Yes, I think that before October 7th, I didn't know much about UNRWA. Like most people, I think, in the world, and the story when it came out, the allegation came out about the UNRWA's employees that took part of the massacre, I really started to ask questions: what it is that UNRWA represent? Why is it there? Because UNRWA was created 77 years ago, not 2, 3, 4 years ago. And the idea of UNRWA was not to take care of the people in Gaza in perpetuity. It was created to take care and resolve the problem of refugees from the 1948 war, which is, it's more than 7 decades ago. And
there's a clear humanitarian problem in Gaza. There has been for years, and before the war that resulted from those horrendous terrorist attacks against the Israeli people. The UNRWA would certainly argue that they are needed in the Palestinian territories, that they're needed to distribute aid, they're needed to look after people. But what you have found raises so many questions.
Yes, I think that there are many agencies, UN agencies, that take care of humanitarian needs. But UNRWA was created after the war of 1948 to take care of the refugees, the Arab refugees of the war. Actually, also the Jewish refugees. There were 70,000 Jewish refugees and 700,000 Arab refugees after this war. and 70,000 were taken by Israel, 700,000, after 7.5 decades became 6 million that are recognized by UNRWA as refugees. Why is that? There's nothing like that anywhere in the world. It's sort of an anomaly.
And tell us about the allegations against so many of them. Well, we know UNRWA itself fired 9 members for involvement with the 7th of October. We know Al-Shifa Hospital, for example, an UNRWA hospital, had that infrastructure that I talked about, the technical infrastructure for Hamas. Does UNRWA, in your mind, after making this documentary, have credibility as an organisation that we here in the UK should be funding?
I think the people needs to watch the film. The film is not about October 7th and the allegations against UNRWA. I mean, this is something that we try to go further back into history and then understand the trajectory of this organization. And what we see is actually that UNRWA is perpetuating the conflict, not solving anything. And
how are they perpetuating? How are they perpetuating the conflict in your view?
Well, if you have one generation after the other, now it's 4th and 5th generation of Palestinians who understand, who think that they are still refugees and think that they can go back to the state of Israel, and reclaim whatever they say that is theirs. Then I think it's perpetuating the problem. And when you see what happened on October 7th, you see this was the manifestation of this idea, the idea that you can go back, the idea you can reverse the 1948 result of the war. And that was, I think really what the biggest victims of UNRWA are the Palestinians themselves, because one generation after the other, in the refugee camps, so-called refugee camps, they're giving the idea that they can continue to think and to reclaim and to go think that they can go back to their places before the war.
Okay. Well, listen, I wish you well with the documentary. That is Dookie Drawer there, who is an Israeli filmmaker. The documentary is called Unraveling UNRWA. We will be speaking to an UNRWA spokesman to get his reaction to the documentary and quite a number of other questions I have in just a minute. If you have some thoughts on this or anything else we're talking about today, 0344 499 1000 is the number. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, we've talked about the documentary. Let's get reaction from the organisation itself. UNRWA's spokesman, who is talking to us now from Amman in Jordan, is Jonathan Fowler. Jonathan, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Jonathan, we're in a situation where 9 staff members working for the UN's aid agency, UNRWA, in the Palestinian territories were allegedly involved in the 7th of October attacks. We have members of UNRWA staff who were keeping hostages, Israeli hostages, in their homes. We have members of UNRWA staff who apparently were unaware that under Al-Shifa Hospital there were huge and extensive, not just tunnels, but also the technological infrastructure for Hamas. Is it not the case that your organisation is deeply troubled, marred in scandal and corruption, and its reputation internationally is in tatters?
I would argue that that's an extremely polemical presentation. I mean, allegations are not
What's untrue about what I've just said?
The International Court of Justice, in other words, the world's highest court, looked into the allegations, as have other independent investigators, and have determined that they were not substantiated. I'm sorry, but repeating things does not make them true.
Are you saying that no member of UNRWA staff was involved in the 7th of October?
There have been UN investigations, there have been independent investigations, there have been allegations. No allegations have ever been substantiated. That's absolutely crystal clear. Look, we're completely dedicated to transparency, so we actually licensed use of our documentary footage. So why did you fire a number of people? Why did UNRWA fire a number of employees then who were working hand in glove with Hamas at various points? Why were people fired if there are no allegations that are substantiated, Jonathan? I mean, the characterisation of working hand in glove without any substantiation of evidence is unacceptable, I'm afraid. However, in the interests of the functioning of the organisation, given the nature of the allegations, it was considered that for us to be able to continue to operate, our senior management have to use their executive authority to terminate the contracts of certain individuals, because our issue is that we need to be able to continue operating on the ground. We face a constant barrage of mis and disinformation. If that is something that actually prevents us from working on the ground, then it's the millions of people who rely on our services that suffer. I mean, this is an extremely unfortunate situation. We have always taken all...
That's interesting. How was it that UNRWA...
But unfortunate for the organisation.
I'm going to ask a question. How was it that so many UNRWA employees, dozens if not hundreds of UNRWA employees at Al-Shifa Hospital, just missed the fact that there was such technological infrastructure under that hospital connecting to the tunnels for Hamas terrorists?
You're also repeating, I mean, one, Al-Shifa Hospital is not an UNRWA hospital, absolutely nothing to do with UNRWA, so you're conflating things here. But also, I mean, we've had multiple allegations that come up over and over and over related to all kinds of organisations in Gaza, never substantiated. I mean, these things needed to be treated with the appropriate level of caution. Things get thrown out in the media all the time.
So is it your position that there are no terrorists or anybody assisting terrorism who has ever been part of UNRWA? Because surely if you're working in the Palestinian territories, particularly before the 7th of October, you'll have to work with Hamas.
We have technical cooperation with governments across the region. That has included the Israeli authorities until they self-banned any possibility of having contact with us. The UN works in a difficult world. The UN works in some incredibly complex environments. I've worked in Ukraine. I've worked in other war zones around the world for the United Nations. War zones, conflict environments are not nice places. In order to be able to bring humanitarian aid and services to people that we are dedicated to serve,
so is it therefore
you have to be able to do your work.
Is it therefore necessary to work alongside and with terrorists like Hamas to get the job done? Is that what your argument is?
I'm talking about it as necessary to be able to work with all actors in a context where they may be present in order to be able to get humanitarian aid to people.
So is it not outside the realms of so is it not outside the realms of possibility, Jonathan, that there could be people working for Hamas as well as UNRWA? Because we've seen, for example, people who've been using UNRWA lanyards, identification, who've later turned out to be Hamas. you're saying that even though you sacked people after the 7th of October, there's no evidence to suggest that they were helping on the 7th of October, that they were Hamas operators, which seems a bit strange. It also seems strange that you deny the fact that there are UNRWA operatives who kept hostages in their facilities and in their homes. You deny all that. You say that's all not true. That's all what Israeli propaganda, or what?
Well, why would that be strange? The evidence has never been substantiated by anybody. It's never been corroborated. You're repeating claims here that have never been corroborated.
So your position is that there is no UNRWA employee, and never has been, that is a member of Hamas. Is that correct?
Look, we work in a context where we have 30,000 employees. Any organisation.
So there are some of them who are members of Hamas.
No, you're putting words into my mouth here. If you would let me finish, we are dedicated to transparency. Over the years, when allegations have emerged, including through our own internal investigations, where we have found that UN staff members have been involved in activities, or even allegedly involved in activities that may be incompatible with their status as a UN employee, that people have been investigated, they have been fired. We're not judge, jury, court of law. You know, we would fire people and they would be handed over to the competent authorities. That has happened in the past through our own internal investigations. You're talking about working in an environment, I don't know how familiar you are with the Middle East, but a highly toxic, complex political environment.
Yeah, I've been there a number of times.
Good. So you would know that the level of tension, the level of complexity is enormous. It is impossible, of course, in any scenario, in any organisation, anywhere in the world, to rule out something 100%. We're being held to a standard here which nobody else would be held to. We are also being assessed by...
I think it's a pretty straightforward standard to say that you don't have terrorists working in your organisation. Wouldn't it be better if UNRWA was stood up?
We have thrown people out of the organisation when allegations have come up against them. Now,
wouldn't it be better, Jonathan, if UNRWA was stood down and aid operations were to be picked up by truly non-partisan organisations like the World Food Kitchen, the Red Cross, or is it just inevitable that all the other organisations are going to have to cede to terrorist demands in Gaza?
That's a mischaracterization. I mean, that's a polemical characterization. I'm sorry. The point is,
you don't need to apologise. I'm very happy to, because I think the evidence is there. I think it is absolutely clear.
Not there.
It absolutely is. It is absolutely clear that there were UNRWA operatives who worked on the 7th of October hand in glove with Hamas, if not as Hamas operatives. So that didn't happen at all. That didn't happen at all. Well, where's that?
No. I mean, look. One does not have to have a legal background to know what the sense of unsubstantiated means. Unsubstantiated means that claims are made, they are not substantiated.
So again, why did you sack people if they had no involvement then? I mean, surely they would, and if this was in the UK and someone simply made an allegation and you sacked someone, they would have some sort of legal redress to you for unfair dismissal.
They do. Individuals can have legal redress. I mean, this is the point. But in terms of the operational interests of an agency which has been basically keeping a population of around 2 million people alive for 2 years, it's about being able to continue to function. Now, you said earlier, well, why isn't stuff just handed over to other organisations? No other organisation has the capacity nor the mandate from the UN General Assembly, so the entire international community, to do what we do. That's a fact. We're not here doing what we do because we want to be necessarily perpetuating what we do.
Well, let's talk about the aid then. Okay, let's talk about the aid. Let's talk about what you do. Let's talk about feeding hungry people and people who've been through absolute hell, the innocent Palestinians. How do you ensure aid goes to where it's supposed to go and help vulnerable people in need, and not siphoned off and sold in the black market by Hamas terrorists?
Well, we have total custody of aid, basically. I mean, this is our operating model, always has been, total custody from beginning to end. So basically, we know exactly to whom aid is going. People are registered to receive aid. This is something that the UN does around the world to make sure that people aren't constantly coming back to get, 10 boxes when they should only get one. So we know exactly to whom aid goes. That's our operational model. That's something that we have applied rigorously throughout this war and also in the past. And it's something that the UN aspires to use around the world. Allegations of siphoning, things being sold off. I mean, all of these things, these are again allegations.
We've seen evidence of it. There is documentary evidence of people siphoning off aid. It has happened. It's been sold in the black market. What are you trying to do to prevent that?
Look, you're conflating two things here.
I'm not conflating two things. I'm not. There is evidence to suggest that Hamas has stolen aid, that other terrorist organisations in Gaza have done that. What are you doing to prevent that?
Not ours. There's been nothing to suggest
So do you honestly, I'm sorry, Jonathan, do you honestly expect our viewers and listeners to believe that not one single grain of rice or one bag of flour has been siphoned off UNRWA aid at all, not once, by Hamas in the Palestinian territories? Is that honestly what you expect us to believe?
If an individual received aid and that individual chose to then hand it over to somebody else, why would that be on the United Nations at all? This is the point. I mean, but you're talking about siphoning as if it's some massive phenomenon. I mean, the thing is, you cannot, war zones are complicated. You cannot rule out, 100%. I mean, it's just an impossible standard to be held to, but we have total chain of custody of our aid.
I'm not saying you could do that. I'm not saying for a second that you could do that, although you seem to be suggesting that a minute ago. What I'm asking you is how you're trying to prevent that happening, because there are people right around the world, many governments, there are taxpayers here in Britain who are funding UNRWA. I don't think they should be. I think that's a mistake. And there is aid that is not going to the right people. My question is, what are the safeguards that you have in place on the ground to make sure that doesn't happen?
Total chain of custody to people who are registered to receive aid. What those people may or may not choose to do with aid afterwards, if they give it to other people, that's a different story. We don't have control over people once they've received the aid from us, but we know who receives the aid. That's the point. I mean, this is done, with total chain of custody, and it's done with full transparency. I'm interested. If you don't think UNRWA should be funded, so I mean, how? We're in a situation where we are mandated to provide services, aid, other kinds of services across the region for almost 6 million people. If we shouldn't be funded, who else would do it?
Well, there are many other organisations that could do it. The World Food Programme, the Red Cross, the GHF, for example. They could do it. They could do it tomorrow. They could do it tomorrow. And the fact is that your organisation is riddled with Hamas. It had terrorists who took part in the 7th of October. There's loads of evidence which you have denied, and I've given you the opportunity to do that today. And the fact is that you need to wake up and realise what is going on in your own organisation, because the evidence is there. You're denying the fact that there's any Hamas terrorists in UNRWA, and the fact is there have been, and there have been for years.
Look, repeating allegations doesn't make them true. The International Court
you
of
repeating
Justice
denials doesn't make the denials true either. The evidence is there.
Okay, so let's back up a bit here. The International Court of Justice, that's the world's highest court, determined that there was no substantiation of the allegations. I mean, you can't argue with that. I
can argue with that, and I can argue. Well, I can. I mean, I can. I factually can argue with it, and the evidence is there. Factually. We've seen it on numerous occasions. We've also seen. We've also seen that there have been UNRWA employees who are Hamas operatives or helping Hamas keep people in their properties who are hostages, for example. You have not criticised.
You're repeating allegations.
You have not, which are true. Which are true. You have not criticised. You have not criticised Hamas once in this interview. Not once, Jonathan.
Listen. Okay, fine. I criticise Hamas.
Go for it.
Of course I do. UNRWA has had staff members thrown out of Gaza in the past.
You haven't criticised Hamas. You've got about a minute left before we go to the news. What would you like to say about Hamas terrorists? First of all, would you like to call them terrorists?
Look, we are the United Nations. We don't do classifications of armed groups, but their aims and their methods are completely incompatible with UN values. That's a fact. Our colleagues on the ground, we've had colleagues who've been thrown out of Gaza by Hamas in the past, before the war. That's a fact. That's unacceptable, because that prevents us from being able to do our job, which is to provide humanitarian aid and public services to the people of Gaza. But again, repeating allegations, speaking about evidence when that evidence has not been substantiated, including at the highest court on the planet, that doesn't make allegations true. They don't stand up. You can talk all you like about, evidence, substantiation, all of these things. I mean, it's like the evidence has never been substantiated.
Jonathan, I think you're living in a fantasy land, but listen, thank you very much indeed for joining me on the programme today.
I would concur, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jonathan. That's Jonathan Fowler there. He's the spokesman for UNRWA, speaking to us from Amman in Jordan there. And if you've views in that interview, if you want to put your thoughts forward, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Lots of people getting in touch about local government as well, about Mein Kampf and the person reading it on the tube. What do you think about all of that? Is that fine? Is there no issue there? Where is the UNRWA documentary being shown, please, says Francis in Sussex. I'm pretty sure you can get it online. It's called Uncovering UNRWA, and you can have a look at that. I'd be interested, Francis, also what you think about what Jonathan said as well. Plenty to discuss in the next half an hour here on Talk. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much for your company. Good afternoon. This is Talk. I'm here for the next half an hour. I'm Peter Cardwell, here tomorrow, of course, between 10 and 1 as well. Then I'm off for Christmas. Well, that was quite an interview with the spokesman for UNRWA, a dreadful organisation that we should not be giving a penny to because they're riddled with Hamas terrorists. That is a fact. He denied it. He's not, I would argue, in control of the facts in that one. We're going to talk about the big political issues in a minute or two, about the unprecedented problems in local government postponement of elections. James Heals, the deputy political editor of The Spectator. We'll talk about Keir Starmer and a secret memo snapped outside Number 10 as well. We'll talk as well about what you want to talk about. Calls, texts, tweets and voice notes coming in, including from Mark in Glasgow and UNRWA. We'll get his views on all of that in just a second. Thank you for yours as well. You can keep them coming in for the next half an hour. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 7222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell on Twitter as well. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss here on Talk. Thank you to Elisa in Chelmsford, who says, Peter, thank you so much for highlighting the issues with UNRWA. This is the UN agency in the Palestinian territories. As you just said, it's not just what UNRWA did on the 7th of October and since, but how they use the schools and the school books to educate Gazan children to kill Jews. There's plenty of evidence of this. If I'd had time, I would have got into that school issue as well in the interview. We only had 15 minutes. There is plenty of evidence of this. I personally don't hold much hope for the de-radicalisation of Gazans. We told Lammy and Starmer all about this, but as always, the Jews were ignored. Nothing new there. Note that there's no such place as Palestine or Palestinians. That's why I refer to the people as Gazans or as Gaza or Gazans. So there we are. It was certainly quite a robust interview, and you've been responding to it. Maybe you disagree, maybe you thought I was unfair with them, I don't know. 0344 499 1000. Becky said it was a great interview. Sarah says if Jonathan Fowler knows who gets the aid and what is the famine debacle about, he's worried about funding, says Sarah. We didn't even get into the pretend famine. Elliot says regarding Mein Kampf as well, why should he read that book? Sometimes we do things to try to understand the other side, not agree with it, just use their mindset. So there we are. And Sarah says, great trying to hold UNRWA representative accountable. Cannot believe he's still in denial. It is really disgraceful. And another person says, we know Hamas have stolen aid sent to the Palestinian people. There's footage out there of them redirecting the trucks and taking the food. You're absolutely correct. I mean, he denied that was happening, essentially. And Robert says, UNRWA ended up to their necks. Everyone knows the truth. Influential people are interfering. Lots to talk about. People asking as well where you can watch the documentary. We're going to get the exact details of where you can get that documentary. I'm not sure if it's just out just yet, but it will be very, very soon, and we will give you the full details of where you can watch that documentary. I spoke to the documentary maker earlier on, but now I just want to talk about the politics of the day with James Heal, the deputy political editor of The Spectator. James, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Peter, just about.
And James, just before we get into the politics, you have an exciting announcement this week, don't you? You've got a big book coming out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's on the Rise of Reform UK, covering the story of the parties led by Nigel Farage post-Brexit and this sort of 10-year in and out battle as he sort of led the Brexit Party and then the Reform Party, winning, of course, those local elections last year and taking us all the way up to 2027 and potentially when they're going to be the biggest party in Wales, Scotland, as opposed to the Conservatives and overtaking them. So it's a really exciting time and very much looking forward to writing it. How difficult is it to tell the full story of Reform UK? Everyone has an opinion on Reform UK, particularly our viewers and listeners. What are you doing to get to the heart of the matter and all those behind the scenes kind of stories that I would imagine quite a number of Talk viewers and listeners would be interested in reading when the book comes out? Just talking to all sides, really, and talking to those who know Nigel Farage very well, talking to those in the party, different ranks, some of his critics as well I'll be speaking to, and, trying to give a sense of history to it all, because we are living potentially through a realignment, because once every sort of 3-4 generations or so, and I'm looking forward to trying to sort of do justice to it. I mean, I'm sort of reminded of that quote, I think it's by I talk about the sort of French Revolution, which everyone thought was 1789. Said it was too soon to tell. Yes. In 1968. It may be too soon to tell what we're living through, but certainly I'm going to look forward to chronicling what I can. And when's it out, James? I know you're writing it at the moment. Spring 27, that's the plan.
Spring 27. Okay, well, I'll put me down for a glass of warm wine at the book launch for that, certainly. I do feel that it's important for authors us to know about the books coming out, and really it is important, especially coming up to Christmas, to think about the political animals who are writing books at the moment. James, thank you for that. Let me just ask you, seamless. Tell me about these local elections being postponed. Loads of our viewers and listeners really, really annoyed about the fact that Labour has said it's not just 1 year, it could be 2 years, and some people actually saying, hold on, if it's 2 years, why can't we just hold an election for councillors to have 2-year terms, for example?
Yes, quite, Peter. And you think about sort of the precedent of by-elections, for instance, where someone towards the end of a parliament might get elected for only 12 months or so before the general. I mean, look, this is about a series of government reorganisations. The Labour government has come in and they point to what they said in their manifesto about potentially reshaking up how government works. In their view, there are too many local councillors. But of course, it does seem, given that how their polls are plummeting, it's rather suspicious that these elections are being cancelled for not just the first year, for a second year as well, and getting rolled over to 2027. Our understanding, of course, is that there's going to be a deadline of 15th of January for the 63 councillors who've been asked they want to cancel their elections. And they've got until that point. It's a bit of a mixed bag as we get in terms of some councils. I think 5 of them have said they will be cancelling, but a lot of them are still sitting on their hands right now and deciding it over Christmas. And of course, Peter, we've seen those cancelled mayoral elections as well, particularly in Essex, where Reform UK were expected to make big gains there.
Yes, and Keir Starmer desperate for a strong start to 2026, but the secret memo has been snapped outside Number 10. I remember as a special advisor, you're always told, be aware, the snappers are out there, don't have anything that you're carrying under your arm that has any information on it. Tell us about this, James.
Yeah, so this is Tim Allen, the comms supremo in Number 10. Who
or not, as the case may be.
Well, also, given the kind of unhappy sort of a tenure of that post, we'll see for how long, who knows, given the various changes in Keir Starmer's team. But look, he was snapped outside Number 10, walking out to Downing Street with a memo that said they wanted a strong start to the year. I mean, I'm sure that's not sort of world exclusive advice.
I'm very much of the opinion we should have a weak start to 2026. I think we should have a weak start. I think I want a terrible. And when people say, we've got to go forward and we've got to make Britain a marvellous place to live. I think, is that all it's cracked up to be? I don't know. It's fascinating when you see time and time again these people just having these things under their arms. Tell us more about what we saw, because of course those snappers, I remember speaking to one of them. I'm sure you know Steve Back, who's a sort of legendary photographer around, who actually said to people openly, look, we are going to do our job, don't do this,
People forget, though, honestly. I think that, sometimes I do wonder if 1 or 2 of these get snapped on purpose or not. But I just think that they leave Number 10, their heads elsewhere, they're thinking that at the next meeting. And frankly, they forget that those guys standing in front of them with camera actually can do some damage. So in this case, it's not a particularly harmful leak. My understanding is that Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff, spoke to Special Advisors this week and told them that they wanted to see in 2026 the first ripples of hope going across.
Ooh, ripples of hope, you say?
Absolutely, ripples. Not exactly the full tidal wave just yet, Peter, but they're going to see the first signs of that, and all about sort of getting off to a strong start. But look, I'll say with those spring elections coming in May, it might kill any narrative they have, and it might also kill the kind of Kemi comeback narrative we're hearing from the Tories as well.
Yeah, tell us about the Kemi comeback narrative. What do you make of this? Is it true or is it just spin? She's certainly doing a bit better at Prime Minister's questions, but as we know from William Hague back in the day, he bested Tony Blair on many, many occasions, and it had absolutely no effect at the ballot box.
Yeah, I think that it's certainly true to say she's improved. She's brought in some proper grown-ups, people like Francis Maud, Stephen Gilbert, Mark McInnes in the backroom roles, all really respected Tory operators. She's clearly improved at Parliament. She's finding her form. She really enjoys it much more now. I think she's relaxed. I think that's good. And her favourability ratings are up at a record high for her. But the point is, Peter, is that translating through? And this is the kind of more fundamental existential question, which is it the Tory party that's really, dead? And for decades, we've seen party leaders in the Tory party have had to be more popular than their brand. You just wonder, now that there's that competitor in the market, and previously we had this pendulum where you go from Labour to Tories, now you've got Reform UK, will that change all the dynamics? And so I think May will be a really difficult time for the party. And even if she's doing well, the more fundamental existential question is, can the party really kind of survive?
James, thank you very much indeed for that. All the very best. Happy Christmas and good luck with the book and everything as well. That is James Healy. He's written another book actually called Out of the Blue, which is about Liz Truss, which is a really good read. He co-authored that with Harry Cole of This Parish, Harry Cole Saving the West, and writing books with James Healy. On the documentary as well, Unravelling UNRWA, Can 11, which is an Israeli channel, are broadcasting it. Broadcasted earlier this month, actually. It's probably on their website if you can get it there. Mubi, the streaming service, have listed it as a film available on their platform, and there'll be a load of different film festivals and different community organisations and Jewish centres as well who will put it on. The Haifa International Film Festival will be showing it as well. It's got general release in early next year, so that's Unravelling UNRWA. We're going to take a couple of calls about that in a second. Nick in Loughborough said, well done, Peter, for putting the UNRWA spokesman through the mill. Of course he was never going to agree with you. Nick, thank you for that, and best wishes to you as well. Really surprised you didn't challenge that guy on food distribution. James, I'm fairly sure challenged him a few times on food distribution. He said they have a list of people they give food to, so a bunch of starving people attend the wagon and each have to show ID before being given food. That is nonsense, says James in Cardiff. I think I did robustly challenge him on food distribution, James, but maybe not on that exact point, and that's a fair point. Thank you to everybody else who's been in touch on all sorts of different issues. We'll get to all your comments after a short break, and then we'll take a couple of calls. Mark in Glasgow I definitely want to speak to about UNRWA, and we have some other voice notes and calls as well. We'll take those. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to John, who says, any chance of a disagree about being very disagreeable spot? Much more entertaining than your usual namby-pamby alternative, Peter. All right, thanks, John. Dawn says, morning, Peter, great show as always. I clean houses for a living. I listen to talk to get through my day. However, if a resident is at home while I'm cleaning, I turn the radio off because I'm aware there will be people who will judge me for listening to talk. It seems you can't move these days for fear of being judged or offending someone. Yes, I could use an earpiece, but I'm old-fashioned. Have a good day, says Dawn in South Wales. Well, listen, I sit on the tube sometimes reading The Guardian. In fact, I remember going to Polly Toynbee's house. You know Polly Toynbee, the sort of high priestess of The Guardian, columnist there for years and years. I went to her house one time to interview her when I worked for the BBC back in the day. She had a copy of the Daily Mail on her kitchen table. I said, gosh, Polly, I didn't expect you to be reading the Daily Mail. She just looked at me and said, know thine enemy. But certainly on Mein Kampf, lots of people in touch on that. Donna says you can borrow the infamous book Mein Kampf from the library, like the concentration camp museums. It's a reminder that this barbarian behaviour must never repeat itself. And thank you for that. Thank you to Robert, who also says, Dukey Drawer, the person who is making that documentary, has painted a target on his back. He's a very brave man. The filmmaking community will try to bury him because he goes against their narrative. Another person says, I studied modern history at university and as such have had and still have a copy of Mein Kampf. The public needs to get a grip of themselves. Well, I remember Tony Benn as well had a copy of Mein Kampf to again, you know thine enemy, I suppose. Becky says, you're certainly giving this book enough oxygen to promote its sale. I know this will be read out now as none of my messages are read out. Well, Becky, I've read out 2 of your messages this morning and you're welcome to keep sending them in by all means. Dan and Kent says, the guy on the train openly reading about Nazism making a statement. It's not just offensive to the Jews, it's offensive to all faiths that battled National Socialism. I wish I'd seen this individual Cardi-P. I would have told him a few facts about extreme socialism. Another person says, I attempted to read Mein Kampf 4 times at university. Found it really boring, unintelligent in every way. Happy Christmas to all. Adrian Baird in Buckhurst still says, as someone who read Mein Kampf many years ago as part of my university course, I can only sympathise with the reader on the tube. A terribly boring book. More seriously, what if anything was he inciting? Nothing. Move on. Best wishes for Christmas, says Adrian. Well, lots of people getting in touch about all of that. Lots of people responding as well with voice notes and so on to the interview with Jonathan a little bit earlier on, the spokesman for UNRWA. This is what Caroline has to say.
Hi, Peter. Caroline from London. Just listening to your interview with the UNRWA guy. OMG. My God. Listen, we all know that United Nations is one of the most corrupt places that there is in the world. The corruption that comes out the UN from so many places in the world is just abhorrent. Absolute rubbish what he's talking about. If the UN has got anything to do with investigations, of course it's not going to be done properly. There is no way on the planet that there's been no terrorism involved with UNRWA. What about all the food that the Israelis gave? 3,000 calories per Gazan a day, and thousands and thousands and thousands of food was found not given out, held back by the United Nations, or when it was given out, Hamas took it. We've got video proof. There is proof. What a load of absolute gaslighting lying. Thanks, Peter. Absolutely appalled.
Thank you, Caroline. Some real wisdom in that. Really appreciate you sending it in. One more short voice note from Elle.
Cardi P, you're on fire today. If I hear the word unsubstantiated one more time, I might poke my eyes out.
Thank you, Elle, for that. Mark in Glasgow has been waiting patiently to talk about UNRWA. Mark, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Morning, Peter. Excellent interview. Almost Jeremy Paxman-esque, if I may say so.
You may say so. You may.
You did not let that guy off the hook, and he tried the old trick of talking over you to shut you up, and it didn't work. Well done, you. Anyway, the UNRWA problem, I think, is an indicator of the fact that the United Nations has not been fit for purpose for a long time. It is utterly corrupt. Places like China, Russia, and all their African friends and so on now give them majorities on various votes that go against the job they're supposed to be doing. And they're now all into WHO. And I think, is that court that he quoted that investigated, is that not the one that told Keir Starmer to give the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, hence onto China? Is that not
I'm not sure of the exact detail of that, Mark, but certainly I think a lot of what you say is absolutely correct. I think for us as taxpayers as well, I think we have to genuinely ask the question, should we be funding UNRWA?
My own view of that is absolutely not. I think the United Nations, Trump's pulled out of the UN because he can see it for what it is. It's an old boys club where useless people carry on doing their business. In truth, no, we need to stop funding it. You're quite right. There are other organizations that can do a better job. UNRWA is completely infiltrated the various bits of video, news stories over the last
There's so much evidence, and he kept saying that's totally unsubstantiated, there's no evidence for it. There's loads of evidence. Google it. There's so much evidence out there.
He is substantiating keeping his job.
Well, there we are. Listen, Mark, thanks for that. Merry Christmas to you, and thanks for the kind words as well. Ian's in Newcastle. Final call of the day. Ian, what would you like to say?
Oh, good afternoon, Peter.
Hi there.
Great call by Mark from Glasgow, by the way.
Yeah.
You stole my thunder a little bit there. I was just saying to your researcher that you could actually tell that he was lying because his lips were moving. This guy could actually, if he was to resign tomorrow his post at UNRWA, whatever that designation may be, maybe he could actually join the Labour Party because they are full of sort of fibbers.
Well, I just think, I mean, I'm not going to accuse him of lying, but I think he's willfully ignoring the truth here. He's ignoring that there is lots of evidence to say that UNRWA employees were involved in the 7th of October, that horrendous attack against Jewish people, against Israeli people, and non-Israeli and non-Jewish people as well. The fact that UNRWA employees kept hostages in their homes, all of that is factual, all of that is in the public domain. He just goes, well, it's not true. It's like, well, it is. I mean, we can see that. We know that. There's documented evidence. There's evidence online. You know, the Israeli authorities tell us some of this, and we have to be critical about that and not simply say one side's telling the whole truth and one's not telling the truth. But UNRWA is an organisation, in my view, completely without reputation and should be disbanded.
Absolutely, and as a British Jewish man myself, I've been following this story quite as diligent as you have as well. I have to say, Peter, that you showed remarkable restraint. You showed far more restraint than I probably would had I been sitting next to him, etc. But so I actually congratulate your restraint there.
Well, thank you. I mean, I am angry about it, and it is. I do think he's living in a fantasy land. But listen, he had his say. If you want to go back and watch it, you can do that. But Ian, thank you very, very much indeed for your very kind words and your call as well. As Ian in Newcastle, happy Christmas to you. I want to thank everybody behind the scenes who has made the programme, the top team behind the glass, headed again for a second triumphant return by Parak Birmingham, the producer, Dave Rhodes, Tech Up Dave, who is hopefully going to be on air tomorrow, actually, talking about Christmas, baby. Tommy Bateson, the assistant producer as well, Davis Fang and Luke Vincent, the visual producers, Luke, who has even more biscuits than usual today. Connor Slattery has been the video editor, and Dean Spencer, the weekend editor. So thank you to all of them, and thank you as well to Marion in Dorset, who says, can I please ask you to get someone to change the baubles on the tree behind you? I'm afraid it's a sort of it's a computer image. I'm afraid they're driving me mad. My mother always balanced the colours evenly around the tree, but your tree has got 5 red baubles near the top. Can you put a blue or green or gold one? By the way, I'm not trying to be political at all, but it's driving me crazy. I know we all sort it as you're such a smoothie. Merry Christmas to you all, says Marion in Dorset. Marion, I'm afraid that is beyond my powers. I will see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Thanks for your company.
Have seen the home team be the winners at the end of the final whistle. That is the most home wins of any fixture in this competition.